Why this loads in. One of the things I want to mention is I'm trying to get 2 show ideas out there about corrections. Okay, one I'm going to push towards PBS. It's a show called Fixing the System, where we can discuss the correctional system in general, or maybe just criminal justice system. You know, you have your host, myself, and then we'll have just guest co-hosts, and we kind of discuss opposing views, and we just try to either build a bridge or inform. So the show is going to be informative. It's going to give access to the public so they can actually see or try to get an understanding of what we do. And I definitely think these type of conversations are needed now. So it's just going to be a show that's going to be informative, and it's going to tell people what it's like to work behind the wall, but also stretch out into the criminal justice system in general. But I am going to focus a lot on corrections, because corrections has a lot of hot topics that really needs to be discussed, and we really need that middle ground. So that's the key. So that's going to be a show we're going to push on PBS. That's one thing. The other thing, which is my baby, which is I would really want to get going, which I think would be more informative, is doing a show that kind of brings people into the jail system. I want it to be a jail, but people got to see it. So it's a little bit different than the talk show. The talk show is going to be easier to do because I have the venue. I can get a studio. I can get the venue. That's not a problem. This other show is a little bit difficult because this show is going to require a jail. It's going to require someone to give us access to that jail. And then we want to talk about, or we want to address the concerns that are affecting that jail, which means that the people that are allowing us in have to realize that we're not attacking them, we're trying to help them. And what I want to do is I want to bring a bunch of departmental experts in, representing multiple departments, and we can address the concerns. Not even just the concerns on the inside, but we'll sit down with the unions and bring the concerns outside if there's any. Like, you know, if there's laws that got to be passed, or money, budget, whatever it is, we can discuss it and start going to the people that can make it happen. And we'll start giving them the whys from Frontline. This is what Frontline is saying. This is what their concern is. This is how it could be met. Why aren't we doing it? And it's needed. But again, I need someone who knows that their jail's vulnerable and who'll be willing to give me who'll be willing to give me their jail. So that's important. That's not that easy, guys. I've been working on that for years. So the other venue is probably going to be the more established venue, which would be, as I mentioned, it's going to be easier venue, which would be the talk show. That requires just me getting a stage. So real quick, I just want to mention something. It's going to be a quick show, guys, because I have to be on the run. But I got a point I want to get across. You know, corrections deals with a lot of preventive measures, which public doesn't quite understand. You know, if you get my drift, like the lockdowns. I don't think they understand the lockdowns, or in New Hampshire, the limiting of contact on a visit, you know, and then you got in West Virginia, photocopying mail before they give it to the inmates. I want the public to know, again, there's multiple preventive measures. Okay, I'm only mentioning 3 right now, but this is part of the evolution of where we're at, because at one point there was a need for these measures to happen, for these measures to occur, okay, if you will. So when the public sits there and challenges the need for these measures, they challenge it to maybe a political figure who's the head of the agency, who may say, well, you know what? Let me see what's going on. Maybe I can fix this, or maybe let me concede. I'll help you out, because they're more worried about tomorrow. They're more worried about getting their votes and running for office or whatever it is. But the front line is going to be affected, because the front line has to deal with it on an immediate level. Whatever the threat is, they have to deal with it on an immediate level. And when people make the effort, like if the political appointee decides, hey, guess what? Too much pressure from the public about this lockdown, and they fold, and then they lift the lockdown, the front line is left vulnerable. The front line is left vulnerable. So my thing is instead of conceding right away, and again, this is to the upper level management, why don't we explain why these measures have to be employed? I think that if you give the argument and you explain the why is so simplistic that it's easier to defend. You know, and I have a feeling that no one's defending the position of the front line. And these are simplistic it's a simplistic defense. We had the incident in Delaware, and I believe it's day 53, guys. No resolution of what happened to Lieutenant Floyd. Sad. But I know their union's fighting to make sure that the family gets the answers that they deserve. But in the meantime, right after that occurred, there would be what we would know automatically would be the immediate lockdown, right? One preventive measure. Why? Because there's a threat. Right? And somewhere along the line, that threat had yet to be identified. So what do we do in our law enforcement world, in corrections? We lock it down in an effort to neutralize everything. That's what we do. Okay? That's an automatic reaction because we cannot identify the threat. Now, oh, yeah, see, Tammy's from Delaware. Now, because we can't identify the threat, we bring everything down to zero in an effort to make it safe so we have the time to look, to investigate, to find out what's going on. And before we lift the lockdown, before we decide to move forward, we have to make sure that we've done everything we can. We've exhausted every option so we can make sure that we eliminate that threat that we know exists in that environment. Now, the public is going to push because they want to see their loved ones, or they haven't talked to their loved ones for a while. Then they may even have some phone conversations with their loved ones back and forth. So maybe some letters are going out, and the inmates are saying their side about, wow, I can't believe we're on lockdown. This is bogus. But the reason why the lockdown took place is because safety and security has to be maintained. It has to be maintained. And if we can't identify the threat, then we lock it down. But it's being done, guys, not just for staff. It's being done for the inmates too. So we don't accidentally, without doing our proper research about the threat, we don't accidentally let them out and then we lose another inmate. We don't want that. So we do what we can to neutralize the threat so we can function eventually as normal. But it requires time, and we have to exhaust every road. Every road has to be exhausted. Now, it is a preventive measure. Even though it's reactionary, yes, it is reactionary, but it's preventive. Okay? It's reacting because we did have a riot. Things I'm sure could have been done to not make that happen, but that's for another day. We'll discuss that another day. But now, we're locking it down to prevent. So it continues. So the reactionary, what we're doing reaction is also a preventive measure for any subsequent threat that we may not have had a chance to eliminate. Okay? So again, if you're in a higher position, and I would like to hope that we have people in the higher position that actually work on the front line or have worked on the front line, but it's not as much as I'd like. Unfortunately, that kind of sucks. But when you do work the front line and you make it all the way up, hopefully, you get those higher positions, you can defend us. And you can mention why that has to be in play. It's a very easy defense. It really is. It's a very easy defense because once you defend our point and someone goes to contest it, there's a liability there. Well, you're telling me to lift it, but having said that, if I lift it, people are going to get hurt. So if I lift it and someone gets hurt, that's on you, because I told you that's what's going to happen. But the problem is we don't have people contesting it because they don't know how, because they haven't worked the front line. So an answer that's simple to us because we have experience may not be so simple to them. So what I would ask them is just say, hey, listen, if you're concerned or you can't answer the question, then what you should do is go to the front line or give them a chance to say something. But whatever you do, don't lift that lockdown. Don't do it. Don't concede to the public's wish, because they don't know. They're not in the field. And it's funny how you're taking advice from people who aren't in the field, who don't see what the front line does, what the front line has to do, but you'll take advice from someone who's far removed, who's getting their information from a relative who's locked up. You see where the conflict is there? You want to lift a lockdown based on what someone's telling you from far, far away land, based on information that's probably not credible, as opposed to, hey, we still need that lockdown. Well, who are you? Well, I'm the officer that works the unit. I've worked that unit for 20 years. So how are you not listening to me? But you'll listen to, at this point, someone who's never even walked in this prison, who's trying to tell you why it should be lifted from information that's rather questionable. But again, when you're in the higher positions, what are you looking for? You need that person's vote, right? Or you want to concede because you have an aspiration for something bigger. So either way, you're not focused on the now. And the now is very important because the now is our survival. You understand that? You can't be working corrections. You can't be on, the head of an agency like corrections, any type of law enforcement, if you're constantly worried about tomorrow without thinking through today first. Because we live in the moment. We deal with things in the moment. So if you sit there and question what we have to go through based on information from people who don't know what we do, that's wrong. That's wrong. And now when you go to lift it up based on whatever pressure you're getting from the public, you're going to get one of us killed. But our family members, we don't call. We don't complain. And that's the sad thing. That's the sad thing. Because we tell our families don't do it because our job's at risk. So they're worried now. And we're the good people. We're the ones that are protecting you, protecting the public. But remember something, guys. We're doing it for the overall collective good. They're doing it because they haven't talked to a relative for a few weeks. It's just not a balance. So just really know where you got to get your information from. Now, on another note, there's other efforts. We talked about in West Virginia how they're photocopying mail and not letting the inmates get the original mail. For pictures, too, they'll put the original pictures back in the inmate's property. When they get released, they can get it when they get released. But in the meantime, they get copies. Now, there's going to be complaints on that. But why don't we ask why we're doing it? How many inmates take advantage of the mail system to smuggle in their drugs? Suboxone, liquid form. Are we dipping letters in that to get a little high? So what do we do to react? You know what? I don't want any of it to get past me because I'm afraid because Suboxone, we got some overdoses going on in our correctional facilities. So in an effort to save lives, what do? We neutralize the threat, right? Now everybody gets photocopied mail. Well, that's unfair. That's unfair because, not everybody's doing something wrong. Okay, but we're reacting. Go blame the inmate who decided to use the mail system to smuggle in drugs. Don't blame us for keeping the system's integrity. Don't blame us for protecting the masses. Blame the inmate who decided to take advantage of the mail system to smuggle in drugs. You're blaming us for keeping everybody safe because we use what we're trained to use, which is universal precaution. Correct? Don't know the threat? Put on those gloves. Right? So that's what we're doing in an effort to maintain a safe and secure facility. Now you'll look and blame us, right? You'll try to blame us because for some reason your loved one has a black and white picture and it's not the original and you're very upset about that. And then you're mad at us because we decided to give them a photocopied picture. We did that because someone decided to use that way, that avenue, to smuggle in drugs. So we lock it down. Don't blame us. Don't blame us. I like what Zach says. They don't want to be blamed for others' mistakes, yet they're all the same situation, prison. Don't blame us for taking that action. Because if we don't take that action and another overdose occurs, family's going to be calling us back. How are you letting drugs get in the facility? This is disgusting. You guys got to do better things, but the moment we do these better things, we get judged. So what we need is leadership that's confident and says, this is the route we're taking, and when pressure gets pushed from the public, they don't give way. Because they know how to defend their actions. And again, if you don't understand, that's fine. Go to the front line. They'll stand up. I guarantee you, if If a family member was calling upper management, complaining about, let's just say, the mail thing we just mentioned, have a frontline officer take the phone. And I guarantee you, respectfully and professionally, they'll explain it in a manner that no one's going to challenge. Because you can't. You can't challenge that without being idiotic and very subjective. We're doing things in an objective manner to maintain safety for everyone. Same thing with visits, right? Limiting the contact of visits. You want to blame custody for implementing that. I think New Hampshire's doing it. You can't blame them. You can't blame the facility. They're doing these things because they were brought to that point where it had to be done. And I would like to see more interaction with the front line. I mean, I'm working on something now so I can try to get that out there. But in the meantime, if you don't know the answers, go to that front line. Because some of the arguments, the resistance that we get from the outside, it's simple for us to answer that, to remove that roadblock. But when we're not involved in that, now it gets a lot difficult because the person that's trying to answer, who doesn't have experience, but he's in the higher position but doesn't have experience, he's been bullshitting his way through. And now the public's catching on that bullshit. So now he's got to remain face. He's got to remain, literally, he's got to stay with his line of BS. But frontline, they would answer it directly. This is what it is. And they would stay true to their word because they live it. They breathe it. So for people that, and again, I only mentioned a few preventive measures. I'm keeping this show rather short. And again, thank you guys for tuning in. I want to mention that the reason why I mentioned preventive measures is I'm tired of the public questioning the need for these preventive measures and then getting answers that just really aren't suffice. You're questioning something that is really such a simplistic answer that cannot be challenged. It cannot be challenged. But I don't know what answers are being given. I don't know if you're just conceding because you want to run for office one day or you have some type of political aspiration in the future. But the three things I mentioned just now, which will eventually get challenged, and I'm sure someone's going to say, well, you know what? Too much pressure from the public. We got to let it go. I answered it. Simple. How can you challenge what I said? That's frontline experience. That's all that was. There's no way to sit there and challenge what I just said. You can't. Because it deals with the overall safety and security of the institution, which involves everyone, inmates and staff. So like Eric Michael said, you can't. That's frontline experience that just gave that answer. There's no way you can challenge that because that answer comes from someone who walks the walk, who sees it, who knows it. Who, if you ask them, why doing this, they answer just like this without even thinking. Because it's a reaction for them, because they fucking live it. They live it every day. And their answer will always be consistent because they live it every day. They're not running for office. They're looking for what? Just to survive. So you don't think their answer is going to be heartfelt? So at the end of the day, just again, we'll come to close, and I'm keeping this show short. At the end of the day, if there's a concern about a preventive measure that's being implemented, go to someone you know that walks the beat. Go to that front line and ask them, why does this have to occur? Why does this need to be done? And if you're being bombarded and you're an upper level manager, you just don't have the answer, go to the front line. Don't answer it. Don't BS your way. Say, you know what? Let me get back to you. Because you can't be worrying about tomorrow when you have people that need you today. That's the key. So again, with the preventive measures, you have to know exactly why it's needed. Because then when you tell it to the public cannot contest that. Zach Smith said also, prisons has changed a lot in the last 15 years, so you have higher-ups that are putting ridiculous orders and policies through or shutting down frontline suggestion because it wouldn't work, but they haven't been on the front line in 15 years. Frontline knows more, has a better insight. I mean, I agree, and that's what we're actually discussing. So again, I want to relate to what Zach just said. That goes with policies and procedures too, which we discussed. You know, why they are what they are, but you have to go to the front line to see if these policies and procedures will work. We talked about laws like PREA and stuff like that. I mean, how can they be manipulated? So again, before we jump the gun about preventive measures, And before you start conceding to the public, saying, you know what, let's just lift it, I just can't take these phone calls anymore. Well, that annoyance to you is going to get somebody killed on the front line. Because you feel annoyed because you don't want to take a phone call, so I'm just going to lift the lockdown. I'm going to give inmates back their mail. Or we'll go ahead and do visits and let them get that back, let them get back their contact because I just can't take Miss So-and-so calling my office. Well, we deal with inmates every day. We deal with their annoyance every day, if that's the case. Because some of them try to manipulate, not all, some. And if that's the case, we have to deal with it every day. You got to deal with one phone call. And you're willing to jeopardize the safety and security for that one little annoyance. It's unacceptable. Because if someone gets hurt, you have to live with that. So again, show us Tear Talk. Wanted to keep it quick. Love you guys. Stay safe. The reason why I'm keeping it quick is I'm going to play a dice game with my daughter. I made a promise. Hey, in the meantime, guys, watch the beginning of the show because I talked about I got working with a production company right now on one show, but I would really like to get that jail show going. I need someone to give me a jail that's badly ran that we can help. Because maybe it's badly ran because they don't have the resources. Well, let's do a show and get them the resources. So, as always, guys, love you guys. Stay safe, and thank you for supporting my show. I appreciate it.